The funny thing is I built this company from the ground up, yet last week, standing outside my own first-class lounge, I got told straight-faced that I didn't look like someone who flies first class. No one yelled. No one sneered. It was quieter than that, almost polite, which somehow made it sting worse. There I was, in a wrinkled shirt, scuffed shoes, and reading glasses that had seen better days, holding a cheap old leather backpack, and watching a younger man breeze past me into the lounge and no questions asked. "Welcome, Mr. Cole. Your usual scotch is waiting." Meanwhile, I'm just left standing, notebook in hand, like a nobody. Let me back up a sec. The name's Jackson Blakey and Paper, founder and CEO of Skybridge Airlines. But on that day, I was nobody special. I've been traveling as Jim Harper for almost 2 weeks, undercover in my own company, trying to figure out why our customer satisfaction scores were tanking and what the hell had changed in the way people were being treated. Turns out, I didn't have to look far. That day, for the 23rd time, I watched someone be quietly filtered out for not looking the part. Only difference was this time it was me. So, I sat out there in the harsh light of the terminal, jotting it down in my little black notebook. Denied entry, no effort, outfit judged, assumed economy. No big emotion, just facts. But inside, something settled hard. This wasn't a one-off. This was culture one that sorted people by the cut of their jacket, or the brand on their carry-on, or how put together they looked after a red eye. I'd seen it happen again and again over the past 10 days. A guy in cargo shorts gets grilled for ID. An older woman ignored while struggling with her bag. Some couple told the upgrade list is closed right before someone in designer gear waltzes in and gets bumped up. But what got me wasn't the obvious stuff. It was the invisible lines, those split-second glances, the tight smiles, the way folks in regular clothes were slowed down or doubted or just plain disregarded. You know what I mean? It wasn't in our manuals or systems, but it was everywhere in the silences, in the body language, in the decisions made without a word. I'd spent weeks as Jim Harper, a regular traveler in off-the-rack shirts, no special privileges, using my personal credit card and an old frequent flyer number. From Boston to Denver, Chicago to Atlanta, the story was the same, friendly on the surface, but under the waterline, a cold sorting system at work. I watched an older man, diamond status flashing on his phone, get brushed off at the gate, told to wait for boarding by group. A young woman in business casual with a designer tote. She gets an instant upgrade check and a big smile. Then, out of the blue, this guy plops down beside me at the gate in Atlanta. David Mitchell. He says diamond since 2007. "You fly often?" he asks. I shrug, play along, and he just sighs. You notice it when you stop wearing a suit, suddenly the smiles vanish, the upgrades dry up, you get flagged for random checks. Turns out, he's been keeping his own notes. Pages of them. He's not bitter, just tired. All I want is for my loyalty to mean something, even when I'm not dressed for the boardroom. I tell him I get a Treely. I do. We end up on the same flight. But something about that conversation hits home. This isn't about perks or privileges. It's about respect, about who gets seen and who gets dismissed based on a 2-second scan. But you know what really blew the lid off? Midway through my trip, I spot a familiar flight attendant, Diane, off-duty in jeans and a hoodie. She's texting away about some guy causing a scene at the lounge. Says he looked like a confused professor, flagged him for extra checks. She gets a reply, watch for him at LAX, same protocol, re-verify ID, random check if needed. Like they had a script. Like this was normal. I sat there, realizing it wasn't just accidental bias or old habits, it was a system, written into unwritten rules, sanctioned from somewhere up high. Back in my hotel, I dug through policy memos, logs, flagged accounts. I saw patterns tied to a regional manager, Thomas Reed, who'd come over after we acquired a competitor. There were vague phrases in the policy brand-aligned presentation and all these new protocols for reducing friction that somehow lined up with this new culture of silent exclusion. People who didn't look premium got sorted out, delayed, re-verified, left behind. By the time I finished my 2-week run, I had enough proof to choke a horse, names, dates, logs, even messages between employees about who to flag. The problem wasn't just a few bad apples. It was a leadership Isuya structural rot. And I'll tell you, I was done taking notes. When I came back to headquarters, I ditched the disguise, shaved, put on the suit, looked every inch the CEO, called an emergency board meeting, laid it all out, every detail, every fact. This isn't a customer service issue, I told them. This is systemic bias, enabled by the very policies we signed off on. Someone tried to push back, called it anecdotal. I shot back, then explained why your CEO got flagged for verification in 4 different cities wearing a $39 jacket. That shut down the room. I demanded immediate suspension and review of the people involved, dismantled the override protocols, launched a retraining initiative, and set up a permanent passenger advocacy council with real customers at the table. The board tried to protest about costs, but I told them flat out, not as expensive as betraying the trust of everyone we fly. Within hours, 17 people were out, 5 from senior management, including Reed himself. When I confronted him, folder on the table, he tried to posture, tried to spin it. But I didn't budge. You thought no one was watching. You were wrong. Security showed him the door. It felt like a weight lifting, but I knew the job wasn't done. The next morning, I stood in front of every Skybridge employee, no script. No excuses, just the raw truth. We lost our way. We started measuring passengers by the wrong standards. That ends now. I told them how years ago I'd once been stranded overnight at an airport, no money, no help, just a kid with a backpack and a vending machine that ate his last dollar. I'd promised myself then that if I ever built something big, I'd never let anyone feel invisible on my watch. Somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that promise. Now I remembered. Later, I went back to the same gate where David Mitchell had been brushed off. This time, the agent smiled first, walked around the counter to help an older couple with boarding. No fuss, no labels, just kindness. It was small, but it was a start. I called David in, thanked him for speaking up, gave him 2 first-class vouchers, and more importantly, a seat on the new advisory council. He just smiled and said, "Don't forget this happened. Don't let it happen again." I promised him I wouldn't. That night, alone in my office, I wrote one last note. Respect isn't a feature. It's the flight. And the next morning, every Skybridge employee got a new directive. From now on, every passenger, every Timmy, no exceptions. So let me ask you, have you ever felt judged, brushed off, or overlooked just for how you looked, dressed, or spoke? Maybe you were that person in cargo shorts, or the older woman struggling with a bag, or just someone who got told quietly, surgically, that you didn't belong. I want to hear about it. Drop your story below, because somewhere out there, someone needs to know they aren't alone. And if you believe this is the kind of change every company needs, stick around. The next story's coming. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next.